How you guys doing today? So right now we're going to talk about something that comes up in question a lot. It is different types of bullets, what game to use them on, why one is more effective than another, and just a whole kind of slew of questions about long-range shooting and hunting and everything else. Now I will tell you before I get criticized right off the bat, I'm not a long-range hunter. I typically don't hunt with rifles. I am a bow hunter. I shoot rifles mainly for really it's target practice. It's accuracy, putting rounds on paper, and really precision shooting. That's what I do. If I was going to go rifle hunting, it would either be close range with my shotgun or close range with my 30-30 lever action. I'm not a fan of taking animal at 300 or 400 yards. Could it be done? Yeah, of course it can be done. A lot of guys like it. I respect those hunters just as much as I respect everyone else. But I personally am not a long range hunter or anything in the business. I take my shots pretty much all under 30 yards with a bow. With that being said, though, I do quite a bit of just shooting, and, well, for the area that I'm in, long-range shooting. Here on the East Coast, it's pretty hard to find a range where you can stretch it out really past that 500-yard mark or so. The longest range that I know about in the area is one in southern New Jersey. That goes out to about 600 yards. And there's a few in Pennsylvania that touch out there, too. Pretty much all the public game lands, though, go up to a maximum of about 200 or 300, including a lot of the private ranges. Now, today we're going to be talking about a pretty common caliber, 30-06. Now, here we have Federal 180 grain soft points, and here we have Winchester 150 grain soft points, and in the middle is a Federal 150 grain casing. Now, you notice the difference here. This is the Federal at 180 grains. When we put it on the scale, alright, so we drop this on, and if you can read that, it measures out to... hold on one second, let's get that. Now see, it's not reading accurately. Alright, it's kind of where I expect it to be. The scale measures this bullet roughly right around 28 and change grams, which is exactly 1 ounce. Now it measures the 150. I don't know if you could see that number there, almost 26. So you're talking, really the difference between 150 and 180 grain bullet is about 3 grams. It's really nothing significant. Now, a lot of guys, preach about what kind of bullets they use, but when it comes down to it, for hunting, medium game, deer, and etc., at the ranges that you would typically hunt in the East Coast, which is really under 300 yards, the 150 grain is going to get the job done. On deer, on black bear, on really anything you're going to hunt around here. The 180 grain will get the job done just as well, too. What it comes down to here is how much energy is retained over the long distance. Now, here we have on the back of this box, and this is not hand-loaded, this is all store-bought ammunition. I don't know if you can see the back of the box. The Federal 180 grain, it starts out at a lower muzzle velocity than the 150. It starts out at 2,700 feet per second, with a muzzle energy of 2,915 foot-pounds. Now the difference is, with the Winchester, it comes with a muzzle velocity of near 3,000 feet per second and an energy of 2,839 foot-pounds, so it's about 100 under. The difference hits with this ammunition right around 300 yards. That's where it significantly differs. The 180 grain will retain energy well out to 500 yards, enough to easily down any medium-sized game. They recommend no less, a lot of guys recommend no less than 900, some guys say 750, for killing a deer or medium-sized game. Now, this round here at 400 yards still has almost 1,400 foot-pounds of energy, while the 150 has just barely 800. That's where the difference comes in. You see the energy, realistically, 400 yards, 1,400 foot-pounds is enough to drop a deer in its tracks without it even kicking. 800 is not. Will it kill it? Yes, absolutely. But what it comes down to there is ethics and a well-placed shot and a good shooter, because could you take a deer with this round at over 400 yards, probably over 500? Absolutely. Would most hunters do it? No. No, it's just what it comes down to. I personally wouldn't even consider it, although could I make the shot at that distance? Yeah, probably. But I would not consider it, because there's too much that can go wrong when you're taking a shot at an animal at that kind of distance, unless you are skilled in long-range hunting, and a lot of guys are. But what it comes down to here really is the energy and the shot placement. it has to do more with the energy of the bullet than the grain itself, because the grain of the bullet, although 150 grain will get the job done, the heavier bullet will retain more energy at those ranges, but it also drops more, so that's another thing you have to factor in when hunting is the drop. For example, at 300 yards, the 180 grain is dropping 15 inches with 100 yard zero. The 150 grain is only dropping 8 inches with that's with a 200 yard zero. Okay, so it's going to be dropping about 12 inches with a 100 yard zero. Now, with a 200 yard zero on the 180 grain, you're probably talking it's going to drop about 13 and a half, 14 inches. So is the difference significant? No, but it's still there, so it's still something that has to be counted in. Now, I'm talking about shooting these out of a pretty standard rifle. It's a Savage Model 111 30-06. It's a very standard rifle. It's a package rifle. It goes anywhere from about $475 to $550. Comes with a Nikon 3-9 scope. And then I put a bipod on it, and that's really it. Other than that, it's a stock rifle. With that being said, this rifle alone will outshoot the average shooter's ability. It will outshoot my ability, and unless you are a trained bench rest shooter, most likely will outshoot your ability. That's the other thing too, proficiency in a rifle. Granted, a lot of guys will use these type of factory rounds. A lot of guys hand load. I think a hand loaded round obviously is going to be superior to these rounds, but at the same time it still comes down to rifle and ability. That rifle with either of these rounds will accurately hit paper in the hands of the right shooter out to damn near 1,000 yards. There's a lot of guys that would say no, with a sporter barrel you can't hit those kind of distances. Oh, with a $200 scope you can't hit those distances. Let's get down to really the point of it. That's bullshit. Does the scope and the barrel come into play when you're shooting long range? Absolutely. And no, I would not take a shot over 1,000 yards with that rifle. Could the rifle itself make it? Yeah, most likely. And would it be slightly a stretch to put a 3-9 powered scope at 1,000 yards? Oh yeah, absolutely. You'd barely be able to see the target, at least in my eyes, and I have pretty good eyes though. That being said, that scope, that rifle with a $700 Vortex or a $1,200 Night Force scope on it, and a sporter barrel, could it take a shot out that far, calibrated right with some adjustments made? Absolutely. The cartridge is capable of it. The rifle is capable of it. It's just the proficiency of the shooter and the glass that you put on top. Really, with all this being said here, what I'm kind of getting at here is that although grain and rifle does make a difference when you're taking those shots, in the situation that the average man is in, the difference between a 150 and a 180 is not significant. Because will it retain more energy at those distances? Yeah. But very few guys, especially here on the East Coast, are going to take a 500 or 600 yard shot on a deer. On varmints, maybe, yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily be using a 30-06 for varmint hunting. I'd be using a 22-250, 25-06, 7mm 08, something of the sort that's a little bit flatter shooting. It's got a slightly smaller bullet. That would be my personal preference. But the 30-06 is still a very capable cartridge out past those distances, and so are most rifles that you're going to shoot it out of. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go take easy 600-yard shots with a Savage Axis or a Ruger American or, don't laugh, a Remington 770. But, with a good enough rifle, good enough scope in the hands of a trained shooter, these factory-loaded bullets will do the job. Would a hand load be superior? Absolutely. But a factory-loaded bullet in these grains will do the job, and the weight is something that really comes into play when you're thinking about shooting with that. Now, I can tell you from experience that without a rifle that's bore-sighted and everything else, you're not even going to be on paper at 100 yards. That rifle, accurate out of the box. The scope got banged around a little bit in transport. I noticed that when I saw the dents on the box, and it took a lot of work to get that scope sighted in. Now, granted, I was sighting it in without a bore sighter on a day there were 15-mile-an-hour winds up in the mountains, so it was a hell of a task, and I wasted 20 rounds of ammunition getting that rifle on point. But once we got it on point, it was consistently on point, even with the recoil, and that was just resting it on a bag. That wasn't even with a bipod. That wasn't with a lead sled. That was really just offhand shooting. So you can do it. It's just a matter of how you're used to shooting. Now, again, these couple bullets here, in my opinion, because there's always people criticizing and always people giving their own personal opinion, I think it's fine. I think the factory ammunition, I can tell you from experience that in that rifle at least, which is not a high-end rifle, it's a mid-range rifle, it will shoot factory ammunition sub-MOA with the scope that it has on it. And I'm not a sniper. I'm not You know, a trained shooter. I've only been doing, you know, precision shooting for about a year, so I'm not really any master of this. I don't reload my own ammunition yet because I don't do enough shooting where it is cost effective for me to do that. But eventually, you know, I will do that, and I will hand load. And I know plenty of people who hand load. I've shoot hand loaded rounds, and you know, I like them a lot. I was shooting a round just the other day. It was hand loaded with, oh geez, what was it? It was 50-something grains of powder. I forget what powder it was. It was a 165 grain bullet, and it was in a Federal brass with Federal primers, and it shot fantastically out of a Savage. You know, dead on at 100 yards, and I'm sure dead on past that, but the range only went to 100 that I shot it at. So yeah, you know, the bullet can be superior over another, but when it comes down to it, factory ammunition, I don't see a problem with. That's really, I started this video, went off on a tangent, but that's where we kind of come back to. I don't see a problem with the factory ammunition. I think it shoots plenty accurate for the average man's purposes. Now, if you're doing 1,000-yard matches, then yeah, you should be hand loading. And if you're going to take 1-mile shots with a .338 Lapua, or with a 300 Remington Ultra Mag, or with a 300 Winchester Mag, or any other type of you know, Magnum round like that, yeah, you should be hand loading, and that will make a significant difference in your shots. But then again, past what we've been saying this whole time about the bullet and about the rifle, at, you know, ranges like that, where you're talking 12, 1,500, 1,700 plus yards, yes, then the scope comes into play a massive role. Everything about the rifle, free-floated barrel, you know, line bolts, the type of rifling, the type of muzzle crown, you know, the type of bipod, everything at that point comes into play, along with the ability of the shooter. So for general everyday purpose, these factory rounds will work fine. On the East Coast, no questions asked. I don't care how much somebody would want to debate that with me. Doesn't matter. I'm not even going to take the debate. On the East Coast, anything under 300 yards, in even a mid-range rifle, these factory rounds are going to work just fine. The difference between 180 and 150 is negligible, besides for the fact that if you're recoil sensitive, the 180 is going to recoil slightly harder than the 150. Other than that, both great rounds. Summed up, the heavier bolt's going to hold a little bit more energy over a longer distance. The lighter bolt's going to shoot a little bit flatter. But all in all, both great rounds, good companies, good rifle. It's going to be an accurate shot, and it's going to get the job done. All that being said, again, I'm not a rifle hunter, but if I was, I would, and you know, I was out in the mountains and I needed to feed my family for the winter, I would trust either of these bullets at either of these weights to put meat in the freezer at, if I was skilled enough and comfortable enough, out to 500 yards, easily, out of that rifle, and especially any other rifle that's better set up. So, case in point, in the end, factory ammunition, in my opinion, for the average shooter, you're good to go.